Let's take a look at Bootstrap. This will be a high-level overview of what is touted as being one of the most popular front-end frameworks, and it's one that I use for building websites, particularly in WordPress, but also static websites. This tool was started by two guys at Twitter. At the time, they were making little campaign pages or event pages, and they found that they were reinventing the wheel for every one of these. And so just to make a starting point, they started a product they called Twitter Bootstrap. That name is still reflected in their GitHub repository for this. And basically, this is a set of defaults that allow you to build a website kind of like building something out of Lego rather than reinventing everything from scratch. And when you do that, you end up creating code that could be recycled from one project to another. It's code that could be quickly learned by new people that join the team. Within weeks, you'll all be writing code the exact same way, which is so amazing. It reduces the effort of testing. So things like putting something beside something else in CSS has not always been straightforward. We used to have to do things with floats, which was a really abstract idea that was hard to visualize in your mind. But as times have changed, so is Bootstrap. And you get these tools. It's all been tested. So thing goes beside other thing. How does that look on a large screen? How does it look on mobile? You don't have to test that all the time. Back in the day, 10, 15 years ago, that was the stuff that QA was always finding bugs on. Oh, on this device, this looks messed up at this particular size, and you'd always be going in there and fixing that. With Bootstrap, you're inheriting, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say 1 million hours of development and testing time and effort. And so I think this is a really good tool. There are other tools. Let's just jump in here. Here's getbootstrap.com. Here is their GitHub account. Look at this, 1,377 contributors. These would be like, the San Francisco kind of developer that would have a baseball card if we collected cards like that for nerds. These are some of the most gifted people that have ever, worked on the internet. So it's pretty awesome. Now, when you compare it to other tools, Tailwind, Foundation, I am confident that whatever you are building, and I don't know what that is, but I know you could get it done with these tools, and these tools will have different pros and cons. I've never worked with Tailwind, but like I see they have a class called MD::Flex. I mean, that'll take me a minute to wrap my head around. And I'm not saying minute in the way that cool people do. I mean a literal 60 seconds of like, what is this in the documentation? And then be like, oh, okay, I get it. And like, I can sort of like intuit that would be on medium-sized screens and up. I'm guessing it's mobile first. Foundation's another one that I know that they've done some pretty cool tools that allow you to build emails pretty interestingly. I don't know the pros and cons of these. I imagine there's incremental differences. You're going to prefer one over the other, but this is outside the scope of this video. You would want to choose one of these apart from instead of Bootstrap if it was going to make something at least twice as good for you. Maybe, makes twice the quality or cuts your time in half on something. But for this video, we're going to talk about Bootstrap because this is a part of a series looking at how to do themes in WordPress and page building and stuff. So, okay, so Bootstrap, let's go back here and we're going to go to the docs. So when you download Bootstrap, you're getting well-considered components and layout tools and content tools and utility classes. And so let's dive into one of these. I'll just go to accordion as an example. I believe we already looked at this one in another thing, but like, here's an accordion. Item 1, item 2, it collapses, it expands. Maybe you'll do your frequently asked questions this way. It is problematic often to hide content, but sometimes you just need to do it. So let's look at the code here. So you've got the class name of accordion. It's got an ID just for this example. And then in here, we've got a series of buttons. So this one's called, it has the content name of accordion item 1. That's this guy here. And then we have another div with a class of accordion collapse, and on default state is load. It loads with show. There's the content inside there, inside accordion body. well-considered class names. There's this old adage, naming things is hard, and they've already put some thought into this stuff. And all the JavaScript happens on data attributes like data BS toggle collapse. And then I love that these code examples have your aria expanded equals true. They wrote that and they wrote the show. Those things both to make it actually be open when it loads. That's what show is doing. And then the aria control to let screen readers and search engines know as well. Pretty great. Then you'll also see aria controls collapse 1 is the ID of this guy here. So that aria name on the button and the ID of the content, those are working in harmony together. Sometimes the JavaScript will actually work on that stuff, but here it might just be for screen readers and search engines. Anyway, so this is like, hopefully, even if you've never seen HTML before, as you look at this, you're like, okay, I kind of get this. You could just click this copy to clipboard thing and hopefully modify this, change this to question 1, put your stuff in here, you're good to go. Like that's half of web development. It's just finding a working example, copy pasting it. But there is so much more to Bootstrap. And my getting started advice to you is start a page, put in a little bit of every one of these. So you're going to go into drop downs, you're going to look at their examples, you're going to play with it, you're going to mix and match. You might put one of these into a header and you might try and change this color and sort of mix and match these things and just start to recreate whatever it is you're trying to build or something that you've built in the past and just start to get to know these Lego bricks. It's a pretty powerful tool. This is also what we call object-oriented. That's a term Nicole Sullivan coined. And it's playfully borrowing from object-oriented programming, and it's just making it more about front end. Harry Roberts has written a lot about this. I sometimes misspeak and call him Harry Styles because CSS is styles. Anyway, so let's take one more example, spacing. So spacing is the amount of space around something. So you've got a button, how much color is around the text? Or, you're going to have a paragraph, how much space is below it before the next thing? Maybe it's a box of content. So that's where you get your margin and padding classes. And so they've made these class names that takes a minute to wrap your mind around, but once you sort of get it and work with it a bit, it becomes quite intuitive. So MT0, I know without even reading the CSS that the margin at the top will be 0. And the only time you would do that would be if you're unsetting an element that already has margin. And so M is for margin. So that's it's like using the force to push the thing away from its, the previous thing away from it or the next thing, pushing it down. You also have P for padding, which is like the, the comfortable area around button. Then it's the next letter. We have a number of another number of options. So we have top and bottom, T and B. Then we used to have left and right, but now we have start and end. So if you're in a left to right language like English, start will be left, end will be right. The amazing thing about this is now you can switch the language to Arabic, and that's a right to left language. Your start and end will switch. Whereas back in the day, you'd have to switch your left and rights, or you'd have to undo it with CSS and just imagine left is always right now. It would just be crazy. The reason I want to bring this up is when a framework has thought about this and has start and end, and they have light mode, dark mode toggles like Bootstrap does, then you know that they've thought about the basics as well. This is a very mature system if it's going to have that stuff. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I am saying it is well thought out and considered and has obviously been tested on thousands of websites. So I love that. I love that little detail. Then we have X and Y axis. X is your horizontal, Y is your vertical. Then the numbers come. So we have M-T. Now you don't need the numbers. You could just say, can you? No. You don't need these things. So you could have M-5 or MP-2 or whatever. Yeah, the numbers. So 0 is literally nothing. And then the other ones are increasing in your padding or margin. So M1 is going to have a little bit of margin. M5 is going to have quite a bit. Now the amount is, it's multiplying by a spacer, which is defined in your variables. I forget what it is by default. I think it's like 12 or 16 pixels or something. And so yeah, so it multiplies to make it a quarter of that or half that, or just whatever the space is, or 1.5 or 3 times that. And it's pretty good. This is a good system. This is a good set of tools. And like, oh, if you look at a Photoshop document, will there be times where you wish you had a 2x? Probably, if you're going to make it pixel perfect. But the reality is, I've always been able to make it feel correct with this. I'm going to just take a side rant here and say, like, often when I'm working with a designer, I will tell them not to fuss about making it pixel perfect. I want to make it feel right using these presets. If we have to, maybe we end up changing the spacer value so it multiplies correctly. Also, if we had to, we could create like I wouldn't do another number. I would make one like called brand or something like that. You know, like brand padding. And I would want to separate it from this kind of naming scheme. But I've never needed to do that. Making something pixel perfect in Photoshop is super time consuming and is trivially easy in code. So I do like to tell designers and clients, like, the Photoshop document, you know, don't hold us to 11 pixels or whatever. We will make it feel right, and we'll be using tools like this that'll keep your CSS slim and make it really easy to manage the website. Yeah, this approach, broad strokes, has just always worked for me. Yeah, so my advice is, if you're going to get started with this, just start building with a little bit of everything. Now, to get started, I'm here on the homepage. I think we have a Get Started section. You can just use the CDN. So you could just click copy on that CSS, copy on this JavaScript, and you've got the defaults and you're ready to go. Like, you could just, I will make a new document. I'm going to save it to my desktop, thing.html, and I'm in Sublime Text. I hit typed exclamation mark and tab, and then I get the starting point. Now I can just paste this here. Which one is that? That's the JavaScript. Go back to this page here, copy the CSS. Boom. Now we could even move the JavaScript to the bottom of the document if we wanted. But basically now we could just like start working with the stuff. So let's go get, not containers. Let's start with an accordion and copy that, paste that in there. You will see that I have this working accordion stuff in here going full width. Maybe I don't want it full width. I'm just going to do a container, a div called container here. Oh boy, well, let's spell it right even. Okay. Select that line, go up here. I'm just going to tab everything. That doesn't matter, but for me right now it does. There you go. So I'm already beginning to play with it. I happen to know the class container makes things not go full width. If I'm going to show my work, I bet you it's in layouts, containers. And there's even variations for small, medium, large size screens. Yeah, it's a pretty cool system. This is going to take you some time. To get to know this. This is time well spent. Yeah, so that's where to get started. Now, they don't leave you on your own either. I'm going to do this one last. Okay. Up at the top here, we have examples. So they have starters. You can, download some code. Yeah, Webpack is a way to like sort of compile your Sass. We're going to look at that in a bit. But here, some heroes, some headers, some features, sidebars. There's so many things in here. So here's an example of some headers. And, obviously you don't want this many headers, but like you can just right click, view source, and you're looking at the code. So what do they got in here? Yeah, so here's an example of one. They've used the semantic tag header, and we have container. So, we have example divider too. So you can just like quickly see where those are and begin to copy paste. If you're not familiar with the web inspector, I can also right click on any one of these. This is opened on the side. I could also make that go to the bottom. I like to have it on the side when I'm testing things responsively. Oh, I went and changed to the wrong side. Yeah, here I have it at the bottom now. I could click this little arrow guy and like start moving around. Yeah, and pick something very specific. I'll click that whole thing and I get this header, and I could right click on that edit as HTML, copy, paste it, what have you. Yeah. So these examples are really awesome. And you could also go to other websites that are built with Bootstrap. You sort of get a sense of some of that feel sometimes, but it can also be themed quite a bit to not look and feel like Bootstrap. In terms of working with Bootstrap, I really like CodePen as a place to quickly just start working with, the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, being able to share it with others really quickly. So working with that as HTML is all well and good, especially when you want to focus on the custom things that are only going to be unique to your site that won't be a part of Bootstrap, or you want to focus on the HTML markup. But there does come a time where you want to start working on, those default variables. You want to change those Bootstrap colors to something else. And on their website, they have some tutorials and guides on how to do that with modern workflows of having your command line running and compiling all your Sass. I've done this one with Webpack before. I literally went through this tutorial, setting up files, creating a spot where your JavaScript is going to be, and having something watching your code, and compiling your Sass and all this stuff. I actually created a repo for myself. I call it the Bloop static site. And basically that just allows me to just start up really quick. I get my one page, and I tend to just develop one page first. Like, here's a little bit of everything that's going to make this site unique. And I'll have my custom Sass, and off we go. Let's take a look at what that ends up looking like. So here I am in Bloop static site. Can I change the font size of that? Sorry about the sidebar if it's kind of small to read. So I've got my index.html, and I put some starter stuff in there on the sidebar. This drives some people crazy, but I like a lot of white space, and then these giant ASCII comments. So I can just read it in the sidebar, like, here's a hero. I can see a Jumbotron. I can see a blog post, things like that. And it's just a little bit of everything that I can mix and match just as a nice starting point. Inside styles.scss, I see that I'm importing a variable reset, and I'm importing the Bootstrap index. So there must be a variable in Bootstrap called primary, and I've changed it to a different color. And here I have my Bootstrap index. So instead of importing it all from the NPM thing, I'm not going to go too deep onto the Webpack side of things. But hey, if you want me to, ask me in a comment, and I'll make it another one for this series. But here you can see I've just commented out things that I don't use very much. Modals, popovers, carousels. Maybe that's an opinionated thing for me. Should I use a carousel.com is another good example of people arguing against carousels. But you can actually just turn that stuff off. And so if you've always felt that Bootstrap is too big, you do have a lot of control over that. I can also see that it imports here Bootstrap SCSS variables. That is where a list of the variables will be that I'm overwriting in this document here. And so I'm not going to go any deeper on that in this video. I will just show my JavaScript thing. It's importing some stuff. This is just the way Webpack asked me to set it up. And then I might have added this from HTML5 boilerplate. But yeah, anyway, I could just write my JavaScript here, and it's going to be all working just the way that you think it should. And so, yeah, this is all the stuff from that tutorial. Yeah, so basically that allows me to develop things just locally before I get it into my WordPress. But I could also just develop a static site in that way. Yeah, moving on. So Bootstrap also has some open source icons, which are actually kind of nice. So I just come here, I type a search, like I'll type Instagram, and it does that fuzzy search thing, and it just pops up. If I click on this, I have options. I can download the SVG. I could use their icon font. There are big accessibility issues with this. In particular, this should probably have a span with the screen reader only text that would tell you what it is. But we could skip all through that and just use the HTML. And I love, it could just copy it right here, bam. Icon fonts end up being large assets that are hard to colorize, it's extra steps to make it accessible. And so I tend to just lean towards the SVG approach. So that's pretty cool. Bootstrap also offers themes. Now, I came here and the whole header is different, which I always find jarring, but it's here under themes under the main site. And here you find some pretty cool stuff. I'm not a huge fan. Which one did I buy? I bought one of these once. I'm not seeing it at a glance. It doesn't matter. So if I just click into this one randomly, I could see the standard price, $49 for a single site. Now, just the way I'm doing this, I just approach that from like an open source standpoint. I am not going to just take this and plug this into a site. I'm going to dig into what they've got and just like add to my, static site starting point or WordPress starting point and sort of extend it from there. The problem that I had was they wanted to extend the number of spacing classes that there were. So I'm typing spacing here. Now you may recall it goes 0 to 5. I believe they added it to go to 0 to 10. And the result of doing that was taking my compiled CSS from 40 kilobytes to 130 or something like that. It was kind of an extraordinary leap and bound. And like at first I was flabbergasted. Like you're like, what? Wouldn't it just be like doubling the amount of CSS that this is? But it does a lot more. Now, this is where you'd want to fact check me, I guess. But like there are other places where these spacing multiplications happen, like your buttons. I believe it was affecting this. So inside buttons, we have button large and button small. I believe that was getting multiplied as well. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I know for sure that the spacing thing that they did was bloating the CSS drastically. And, if you want a little bit more spacing, you could just have a couple more divs. Like there's other ways around it. Or in the past, I will also just create a div called like brand spacer, and that just empty div will just add the space that I want. Like I think there's other ways around it. You just create your own Lego brick. Anyway, so your mileage may vary on these themes. Just if you're going to get one, budget a couple hours to just dig into what it's doing, understanding how it's impacting your end, your footprint of how fast and performant your site can be. But I also do have to give a shout out to Ninja Bootstrap. I don't know if I love this yet, but the makers of Live Canvas, which is what this series is about, they developed this as well. And, I am interested to see what they do with this. So inside of this, they are adding some of those margin and padding classes. You can be sure that I'm going to be digging into that in the coming weeks. And they've added some other classes that they think are valid Lego bricks that are going to make building stuff easier. So they have new stuff with sizing and colors and spacing. What I'm kind of really interested in, though, I believe they're taking inspiration from Tailwind, because they have something called Tailwind Grays, but they're adding all these tints and tones. So instead of just having like the default primary be like that one blue color, they're adding like from 25 to 900 as like a scale. And these Tailwind grays, background grays, they're interesting to me. It's not just gray, but they've got a little bit of saturation in there, a little bit of slate. Even the gray is a little bit warm. Zinc, neutral stone. I even kind of like the naming. So I don't know. It's going to be in Live Canvas. I imagine that is I can comment out a line of CSS and it's probably going to be gone. Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to shout that one out. It's a little different than a theme. It's still object oriented. Okay. The last thing I wanted to show you is I just came here to chatgpt.com and I did not sign in. I'm just using the free account. And I said, I need a set of tabs written in Bootstrap 5. Please write the HTML. I want 3 tabs: details, specifications, reviews. Have the content of the tab be right aligned. Sure. And yeah, it's done something. And so here is what it has done. Now, it did not right align this text, actually. It right aligned the tabs. So this is classic AI. Like maybe I should have written the prompt different. All I did was copy paste, save it in HTML and open it here for you to show you what it did. Could I work with this? For sure, 100%. I don't need it to do anything else. I can make these tabs go to the right or be centered. I can change the content. Like really all, my philosophy with ChatGPT is it's draft zero. You're using it like the fanciest Stack Overflow or, a Bootstrap documentation thing that's going to give you a way better starting point. So um, I love, like, this is the code that it made. The button for that tab has the ID and the ARIA labeled by, and so it has those considerations. Um, it has this justify content end. That's what's pushing all the tabs to the end, I believe. And it was missing this. So I wrote this. I put this emoji here just to flag it for myself. I wrote more content and I put text end, and that fixed it. So ChatGPT wrote draft to zero, and then I start finagling it and editing it. That's my workflow. I didn't need ChatGPT to make it perfect for me first try. It also wrote this stuff, which is kind of nice. It went and got the CDN 5.3.0. That's pretty good. That is the current version. So this isn't my first time demoing this for someone. I've asked it to do 5.3 and it just gave me 5.0. And at that point it was 100% fine. The other thing that was interesting the previous time I did it, when I asked for, like, I can't remember what all the tabs were, but I said specifications for sure. And it was calling it specs tab. And I just loved that it shortened specifications to specs, which is like a common short form that you might see. So ChatGPT, it might be different from one time that you try it to the next, even if you ask for the same thing. But as a pair programmer, that's pretty helpful. So that's just a high level overview of Bootstrap, what it is, possibly what it isn't. It's a tool that the more you get to know it, the faster and better it becomes. And so I can build something that I see in Photoshop kind of at the speed of thought. Some of these classes, they just become intuitive over time. So your containering to put things in the middle of the screen, your text aligning, your padding, your spacing, all that stuff's going to be intuitive. You can also use tools like text expanders or snippets in your code editor to speed it up even more. It's just a really great tool to create well-tested, stable code that is just going to do what your website needs it to.